phone?
Bro, we are live on YouTube. It says it's setting up your meeting live YouTube, but I get this little thing. It says we are live on YouTube. There's a huge lag. There's a
There
huge
it is.
lag.
Somehow you activated my phone and started looking up something.
I'm telling you, they're listening. They're listening. Even when you tell them not to, they're still listening.
Oh, they probably listen even more.
So here we are. Michael, I haven't seen you for a hot minute, right?
I know, it has been a little while.
So what's been up with you? We're going to talk a little bit about love, light, and enlightenment, and maybe identify some of the differences and what may or may not be helpful.
That face just made a priceless moment. Oh, so what have I been up to? I have been up to, I just got done with the paranormal road trip and working on a book and working on podcast shows and getting ready for a conference in July where I'll be emceeing. So that'll be a fun dip your toe into the conference world.
Ah, where is that at?
St. Petersburg, Florida. It's the Full Disclosure Now conference.
Okay. Brian's going to be there. I think Augie's
Yep.
talking about going too.
I will be the MC on the small solar stage, and it, I'm like, okay, this is going to be fun. So I don't have to create a topic. And then I thought about it the other day. I was like, no, actually, creating the topic probably be better because now I got to introduce a lot of people that I may or may not know.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to dig into some of those. Well, you got that owl shirt on, so you're going to have to tap into some of that wisdom and just kind of wing it.
So basically, running like a podcast show.
Yeah, actually, pretty much, basically. So, I did have a conversation not long ago with Stone Hobbit about the idea of love and light as opposed to the Enlightenment. What's the difference actually? And I started thinking about it. There's a difference between all three of those concepts, and pretty much it's going to depend on where your starting point is, what your filters are, and what your personal goals are in life, what your focus is, on how you would define each one of those terms. So how would you term love and light as opposed to someone who is enlightened and cannot be both?
I'm kind of wondering how often all three are in contradiction and if they ever do go in alignment because how they're used. And for me, the issue with talking about love is so undefined, it's hard to conceive because when you think about it, there's love of a friend, there's love of someone special in your life, there's love of family, there's unconditional love, there's the love you have for your pets, there's conditional love because of the types of relationships some people are in. So it's like hard to go and say this is love, in my opinion. So that it's almost like I think the best way someone described it is it's more of an emotion than a concept. So when you think of it in terms of emotions, it becomes a little easier to understand. And I think I just lost you on that one.
You lost me in what way?
Oh, the look on your face, it was like you were like, where is he going?
No, no, I mean I get it. The even the idea of something like unconditional love and terms like altruism, uh, a lot of these have those cultural filters. One of the things is that it says without judgment, but I think there's a difference between having judgment and being judgmental. And really, you want to have it without being judgmental. We always need judgment. We need good judgment as much
Yeah.
as we can get. It's kind of like, having too much chocolate. It just can't happen. You can't have, I guess, and judgment comes hand in hand with discernment. But as far as the love aspect, what do you think is the most important uh, type or focus of love? So we're going to start off with that because that was first on the list.
So if you were to ask me that, say, 6 months ago, I would have told you unconditional because it means limitless. It means it's there no matter what. And I started to think about it and going, well, in order to have an unconditional love, that means there's conditions in love. Because how do you have unconditional and know it's unconditional because of the conditions it's in? It has to have conditions. And so I was like, I started wrapping my head trying to figure that one out for a while and just gave up and was like, yeah, my own arguments just started going in circles. And I was like, yeah, never mind. I've defeated myself. So forget the unconditional love part. To me, I think the most powerful love and the most powerful concept of love is when you love someone like you love yourself. So if you're able to say, look at yourself and be like, I know I'm flawed, but I love the fact I'm flawed. I'm not the smartest one all the time. I make mistakes, but I love that about myself. And you start to look at it that way, then the perfect love comes in because what you're seeing in yourself, you see in others. So that person that resonates with you, you're looking at them and going, and I know this, I don't mean this to sound insulting, but you're looking at me going, you make stupid mistakes, but I love it. Just like I love it about myself. You're not the smartest one on the block, but I'm not either. And I love it about me. So I love it about you. So it's like, to me, it's the most free loving between people. And it doesn't matter who it's with. It can be with your friend, it can be with your significant other, your family, pets, everything in the world. If you look at it through the same filter, to me, that's the purest form because it's like you were saying, you're not being judgmental about it. You're judging what it is for what it is, and you're accepting it. And if you can't accept it, you have to look at why. But then the bigger question is if you can't accept it in them, you can't accept it in yourself. Why? And so it turns on you. So it's always a mutual, balanced view of what you what you like in someone, you like in yourself. What you dislike in yourself. So it's a matter of perspective of sitting there saying, I can love you as you are means I can love myself as I am. That's all we can ask.
And that's kind of what unconditional is. That is in and of itself a condition. You if you can define it, there's a boundary or a border to it. But the first and foremost, I don't think if you are unable to have that caring about your own self, warts and all, that it is going to be more difficult to have a healthy, caring relationship with anything or anybody. That includes your pets. And I have a Velcro dog, and if she comes up, because she was up here just before we pushed the go button, and she would try to crawl in my lap. I'm on a chair, it's on wheels. She would try and crawl on my lap. She's about 120 pounds. It's not particularly comfortable when she tries to do that. So what I have to do, and this, hey, most people don't like to be ignored, but in order for her to settle down and relax, I have to completely ignore her. And that is my version of having that. I'm not judgmental of her. I'm just kind of treating the situation as it needs to be treated. And that's kind of how we have to sometimes treat other beings in our life because she's definitely something very special. But then again, there still has to be, here's that word again, boundary.
Or you could look at it this way as you love her so much, you're helping her to learn healthy boundaries.
Oh, good luck with that. She's a Velcro dog. She's not going to change. And that's part of that whole, you know, loving that warts and all, because that's her wart, if
Yeah.
you will. That when I sit on the sofa, I have a 120-pound lap dog. She is in a heartbeat. And that's when somebody says, "Oh, when I get home, my dog is so excited, they just spin in circles." And I said, "Dude, if my dog did that, it already the carpet moves, the furniture moves, things fly. I don't have tables. I don't have like breakable things that are low dog height. I can't do that. But I guess that's again, that's all about, putting things into perspective, and kind of taking people and beings for who and what they are. She will not change. She's 6 years old this year. She's not going to change. And yeah, and I think if you have somebody in your life like that, you're not here to necessarily change them. Could I spend the time in trying to manage my dog? Probably. I could probably get her to behave in a more congenial manner that other people might find that to be acceptable. But you know what? I want her to be her. I just want her to be here and she's here and just be herself. And she lets me be myself, albeit, in my face half the time, but that's okay. That's just part of who she is. And I'm okay with that. But I think too, with the title of this, kind of leads into a little bit different direction, because of the love and light has a tendency to be individuals or groups of people, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe shed a little light on maybe other groups or other perspectives of what it means to be someone who is following that moniker of love and light. And a lot of people will attach things like New Age belief system. It's another religion. It's like the contemporary, 1960s, what was going on back then. This is with a new version of that. And I see a lot of people talking about, they don't like capitalism. They don't like, different aspects of any of the isms. And I kind of feel like, well, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. You can be, someone who considers themselves to be love and light, but you can also be one of those people very steeped in capitalism or communism or, republicanism or democratism or any other Catholicism. Any ism you can put on it, it becomes its own, almost like an entity. But then again, it's not about the ism, it's about the greed. There's nothing wrong with wanting a nice house and a nice car and all those other things. If you want to live in a neighborhood, if you want to live in the country, or live in a condo or an apartment, and that's not really the point. The point is that it's not these isms that are the problem. It's the greed and people wanting to. If you don't have their vision or version of the ism, whatever that is, that you're the problem. And that's where I think they kind of fall to the wayside for me, is that anybody who considers them part of a love and light community, then irrespective of what they're going through and maybe other people are, there we're going to go back to that word of being judgmental, using good judgment, but not being judgmental.
So the interesting thing I find is, in my perspective and experiences, all the isms, there is, like you're saying, there's nothing in text word or concept wise wrong with them. It's like they say everything looks great on paper, but in reality, it never looks like it looks like on paper. And so that's where the problem comes in, is nobody in all the isms accounts for the biggest ism of them all, humanism. And by humanism, I mean the ability to act and relate to everything in a human way. That means it's going to be flawed, it's going to be messy, it's going to be confusing. Why? Because that's the way we think humans are. We don't view each other as, okay, you're a person standing over there on, for example, I could say in humanistic form, looking at you going, well, you're on the other side of the screen and you're wearing a t-shirt, you got long hair, and I can describe all these things about you, but that's not you. That's where the humanism is we don't look at everyone as individuals. We look at the construct around them that makes them up in our minds. And so we create all these ideas in our heads of, oh, because she looks like this, she must be this. And because she doesn't do this, she must be this. And all these forms just are coming in. And that's where all the isms fail because nobody takes and stops and goes, well, if we looked at each other as equal individuals and that, everybody contributing what they want to contribute and the system works great, that could be the definition almost of socialism and could work. But you have the element of someone saying, well, I have the nicer car, so I should have more of this because I have to maintain this and I have to look like I deserve this car. So I need more of this. And that's where capitalism comes in and gets its negative connotation because everyone starts looking at the stuff. Who has what?
And
How
there
did they
is
get
now
that?
the underlining thing that you're just pointing out is about greed. It's about the greed aspect of those things because they want
It's
more because somebody
well,
else has more.
not necessarily that. It's I'm looking more at the deeper individual perspective of how they're perceiving it. Because I can guarantee you, I've known people who are rich and people who are poor, people who are middle class, and there's two sides of the coin. There are those that will hang on to everything they have because they feel like this is all I have and I work so hard to get it that they're gonna struggle. And then you have those who are like, well, I can go buy this and, next month's check will clear all that so I don't have to worry about it and I can live carefree and not worry, but that's as long as the income's there. And as long as those perspectives of what's happening stay the same. You throw a change in there, they all will panic. And we call it greed, but to me, I'm looking at the deeper of, let's say, hypothetically, I had a Porsche and I'm going, in my mind, going, I worked hard. I got this Porsche. It's paid for. It's running great. I can feel great about it. But then I go and say, and somebody walks by me and goes, and gives me a look like, how do you have that car? What happens? My mind starts looking at it going, oh, they're right. I don't look like I should have this car. I need to change my look. And so then all of a sudden I'm buying new clothes to match the car. And then somebody's like, why is that car at that house? And you're like, oh, yeah, they're right. The car, the clothes, it doesn't match the house. So everything starts trying to match what we perceive everybody thinks everything should look. It's not necessarily meaning, oh, I have this much money, so I'm going to flaunt it. A lot of them are just trying to look the part because they're really not. But there's the societal term, fake it till you make it. If I look it, I can become it. And so they'll put hardships on themselves to make it happen, trying to live up to that. And that's where I think a lot of trouble comes from is greed aside. You could take greed out of the equation. You're still going to have the scenarios because people inevitably will judge themselves based on what they think everyone is thinking because we are such a brilliant race. We never stop to think, ask somebody what they're thinking. We will sit there and say, oh, I don't need to ask you. I know what you're thinking, even though I have no clue what you're thinking.
But then there are those of us who say, I don't give a rip and a snort what you think. I'm going to do what I like. So I think a lot of the people that I think the Bible even talks about how you're going to be blown about by every wind that comes by. So if you're not feeling worthy, if you feel worthy to go out and buy that nice car and someone says something to you about, oh, why should you don't look like you should have that car. And you go, oh, yeah, I guess I do, need to dress nicer. I would say I don't give a rip what you think I'm dressed like. I am worthy, whether I'm wearing a ripped up, stained pair of pants and a slobby sweatshirt. That's for me to enjoy my really nice vehicle or my really nice home in. So I think we have a tendency sometimes to maybe categorize too much. And what you really identified is judgmentalism.
Right.
You're being very judgmental. We need good judgment, but we need to avoid that judgmentalism because that's what's the tearing down. And if you're changing your outward appearance to match someone else's view of you, eh, probably not the healthiest thing to do. That and that, you need to like yourself, warts and all. Oh, I am not a fastidious housekeeper. So, my point is, as I'm not a slob, but I'm not going to sit there and get stressed out if I didn't vacuum in the last 4 or 5 days. You know what I mean? I could vacuum every day with that hairy thing in the other room, but I think we do have a tendency. I'm trying to remember what you were talking about, the nice home.
Oh,
This one card has been pulled up quite a few times, and I think this does have kind of a little bit of a love and light, if you will, perspective on it. But it was this card. I kind of shuffled through and got it. And there's no
no
place
place
like
like home.
home. And I don't see this as something that's literal per se. It is a home. Then the home is not a physical house structure. It's our vessel. It's the physical form of what is this thing. And don't call it a meat suit. Don't be disrespectful, because this is a very complex divine creation, and we created it. You're responsible for this thing you're inhabiting. So the house is our vessel, and it's tethered to the universe, and it has access to all this information. And what's bringing that light and life to that vessel, that home, is our essence. So that's the light from within. So that's our light aspect of being human, that human that you were just talking about. And I
So
think
it's in,
being human to humanism, and we're getting into transhumanism. We'll have to save that for another another day.
well, what's interesting is when you first showed that card, No Place Like Home, my mind went to the movie Wizard of Oz. And when you look at Wizard of Oz for what it really is a roadmap. It's not just a movie of pure entertainment. There's a roadmap to it laid in if you pay attention. So, what's the first thing you see about the movie Wizard of Oz? She wants to be gone. She doesn't want to be there. So, what happens? Tornado comes, the house is gone. She's in a new place, new people, and she goes and underline this, what we quote unquote call a hero's journey of discovering what's important to her and starts to realize, all these characters in her mind are being portrayed around her in Oz. And when you think about Oz as being the dreamland, it starts to make sense. There's the good voice in her, the bad voice in her, like you're saying, discernment. Which one are you going to listen to? There's the little nitpicking voice that is trying to be like the conscience. Those are the munchkins, when you think about it, that are trying to do right and just live a happy life and being friends to all and, you know, treating everyone equally and the same and being, accepting who they are. Like you had the lollipop guild, and nobody ever said you shouldn't eat so many lollipops. Nobody cared. That's who they were. They accepted it. Then you go and she doesn't feel comfortable there, so she has to go on this journey within the journey. What happens? She's following this road. She meets the Cowardly Lion, who is so brave, but doesn't see himself as brave. And she has to point out how brave he is. And all of a sudden, he changes. Well, what happened? She changed how she saw herself and how brave she really was. Then she runs into the Tin Man, who had no heart. Well, she, apparently, feeling like she was trapped, had no love, no heart for the land where she was. What happens? She convinces him how he has this big heart and he starts to hear it beating within his metal frame. And what happens in that moment? She talks about wanting to go home, that she wants to be back home. So she's found her heart in her home. And the scarecrow is her lack of being able to talking to everyone around her about what she's thinking, what she's feeling, because she was trying to isolate herself. What happens with the scarecrow? He starts to think about things. What happens to her? She starts to think about how she can go to this place or that place, get home, and the whole movie starts transforming. And the Wicked Witch, melts by water. Well, that's just her mindset of all the negative things around her disappearing, melting away. And what is the one line the good witch says when she returns to Oz to say the witch is gone? The power to go home has always been within you. And she clicks her heels and she's back home, and everybody changes back into the real people that they are. And what's the first thing she says is, "Oh, Auntie M, I'm so glad to be home." So that's where I think that card is coming from, is like you're saying, it's tethered. But when you look at what it home means, you were right. It is something within you. It's not a building on a street, on a planet, on a piece of dirt. It's within you everywhere you go. That's why people, when they move, they all, the first thing some people will do is hang a sign that says there's no place like home. Well, they just left home for a new home. How do you have two homes? It's not a place, it's a mindset. So now you're thinking, here's this, and sometimes you will go back to your family home and feel differently about it because you're seeing it different, because you're no longer that child looking at this house and going, "Oh my God, my parents did this, my parents did that," and while you were growing up and all the stuff, like, now you're looking at it like, wow, this is where I was shaped. This is where I was formed. This is where I became who I am. And each stage, if you move multiple places, each place you live forms and creates you in a new way. So when people, in my opinion, are talking about love and light, they're referring to not the concept of love and concept of light. To me, they're looking at where you can stand back and see everything for what it is, accepting it for what it is, and acknowledging it for what it is, and being in a place where everything is fine. You're not stressing, you're not in judgment of anything, you're not sitting there in your mind going, well, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay for that now that I'm here? You are just there. That's the concept of love and light. You're just being in a moment, and you're not focused on anything but yourself in this moment, being the best you know how to be at that point.
So you know what the interesting thing about the whole Dorothy story is that I kind of saw that, and that's kind of a an interesting. If you read the original book, it's very different to the movie. So I think the movie kind of put a contemporary twist on it to get a few things across. Not sure if this was one of them, but each one of those characters that she encountered was an aspect of herself as well. It's not just that, I think it was just their way of making the movie interesting that the characters that she played in this dreamscape were representative in her mind as someone she could relate to, like the auntie or the lady down the street or the uncle or the I can't remember who the wizard guy was.
Mayor,
He
I
was
think.
he was a yeah, it was like a magician kind of guy, but I guess the idea was is that in her mind she had each aspect or characteristic within herself that was a piece of herself that through that journey she was able to acknowledge and reconcile with. So it's how she got the cowardly lion to realize that was like like it was definitely an internal dialogue from her perspective was conceptualized by that lion and the heart and not having confidence in herself and the scarecrow with not being smart. Well, she didn't think of herself as smart. And then to see something outside of herself and then she's discussing with this scarecrow that she doesn't realize is actually her own insecurity. So she had to deal with each one of those aspects of herself, even the wizard, Glenda the Good Witch, the one that ended up underneath the house, even the little munchkins. Those, I mean, how many times do we get niggled at in our little head? And it's like, dag nabbit, I've been trying to fall asleep for the last 2 hours. And you got those little munchkin things running through your bean. So these are things that we should try to be reconciling ourselves with. So for her, it kind of seems like that was her path of enlightenment. So there was this love and light that was on that path. So she had to learn how to, bring light. She also had to show that expression of love and caring. And in that path, she realized when she was told by another aspect of her own self that you can go home anytime you want. You're always there. And again, that's why I go to that picture, that physical house and that image is really our physical vessel, and that we have this unseen tether to this place that we're in right now. But what animates and gives life to the vessel is the essence from within. It's not the brain, it's not the mind, it's not, your heart and your lungs. It's the influence of the essence that changes and adjusts and either takes out of alignment or puts into alignment these different energetic aspects of the physical form. And that, when we do that, that's where enlightenment comes in. Just my personal perspective. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but this conversation is not really going in the direction that I thought, because I know a lot of people kind of think of, oh, love and light and fluffy marshmallows and sitting on a hill eating, magic mushrooms and smoking some, goodness. But people kind of look at it that way and having a communal living. And if that floats your boat, that's great. But the other thing is too, the rest of us still do have to carry on. And if we aren't going to be judgmental, then other people who have a different lifestyle should also not be judgmental of us. I mean, that's just kind of throwing that out there, because well, you shouldn't be judgmental if somebody wants to be a certain way. Hey, great. Pay for your own ticket. Don't expect me to support you financially in other ways if that's not where I I feel that is ethically or morally or anything like that what I would support. I'm not saying that is me. I mean, you can fill in the blanks if you want, where I'm kind of hedging the issue here a little bit, but be who you are, and again, love yourself, warts and all. You know what I mean? It's that whole it is that love and light, but we don't want to take things too far to the extreme that we expect everybody else to be that. It's okay to have that integrated dark side, because if we don't, then we're going to be lopsided. And that's come up quite a bit, where there will be two aspects on a card, and one will be very dark and one will be very, light, or as I prefer to say, shadow and light. And it's really bringing to light, that exposing maybe that we have all of that within us, just like Dorothy had all of those characters within her that she was, receiving that enlightenment through her path. And those don't go away. They're still part of her. Just like the light and the shadow, it's always going to be part of each one of us. And they're useful, both of them. So integrating them, loving yourself, warts and all, however you want to perceive whatever that is, light and dark, because again, that's a filter thing. That I don't think you can have true love and light without the shadow. And if you do, I think you're going to be missing a significant aspect of what could really provide you with a dynamic portion of enlightenment.
Well, an interesting, you bring it up like that because what flashed in my head was looking at Star Wars Episode 8, the new movies. I know you probably haven't seen it, but you're familiar enough with Star Wars where if I say a name, you're going to know who I'm talking about. Well, there's a scene, and I think it's actually 7 and 8 and 9. The last trilogy is where Star Wars meets Enlightenment and declares and says once and for all, this is the map that everything has led up to. This is what it really is. It's not what we thought. It's not always what it looks like, but here it is. And what I mean by that is, so Star Wars, we're told Luke, he's the chosen one. He brings order and balance, they think. And then all of a sudden, he goes looking for something because his own nephew he viewed was going to go to the dark side and he couldn't handle that. So he had to go and figure out why this happened. So the whole balance gets thrown out and he throws it all away in essence and is like, I failed. I got to go back. I got to start over, relearn everything, and see where I failed. Meanwhile, everybody else continues on, and growing. Well, then there comes along this woman named Ray, who is brought up on a junk planet. Her parents abandoned her there. She's raised under harshness. Same story as Luke. Abandoned by parents, raised instead of on a farm, raised in a desert where she's a junk dealer, learns to fix things. Luke knew how to fix things. And there's some correlations between the two, but the difference is they show when she goes to get trained by Luke, he doesn't want to do it, and she shows she has abilities, and she's not afraid to learn on her own if she has to, and he sees that and starts testing her. And one of the big scenes is there's this hole and there's this ugliness growing out of it, and he says that's where the darkness resides. And she's feeling a calling and jumps in and sees herself, sees this mirror image of herself, and starts to see different aspects of herself reacting. And then she comes out and she says, "Okay, you need to train me." And he goes, "I'm not going to train you." She goes, "Why? You didn't even hesitate to go into the dark. You just jumped right in." Meanwhile, he's facing his own demons. And there's this scene where he has all the text from every Jedi in this tree, and Yoda appears as a spirit form, shoots lightning, sets the tree on fire, and starts to burn the books. And Luke jumps up, runs to the tree, and Yoda says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I had to say the text. It's the knowledge of who we are." And Yoda looks at him and goes, "They're just books. The knowledge is within you." And Luke has this big moment of realizing, oh, he was too book learned and trying to live up to the standards of the book, where Ray was, I'm going to live up to myself, what I can do. And if I go in the shadow, I'll face the shadow, I'll embrace my shadow, and know it's a part of me. And where I'm going with this is in the last movie, there's a scene where every she's on the ground about to be killed, and all of a sudden you hear the whispers of every Jedi ever that was around, and she stands up and is able to defeat the dark side, so to speak. And to me, the enlightenment part is she was walking in the light and the dark, so neither side could take control. She learned the balance of both, hence they couldn't defeat her. And that was the thing that the Jedis of the old never figured out. They thought you had to be positive, forget anger. You could not experience anger. That would be devastating. That would lead you to the dark. That you're not allowed to go there. But here, this ultimate Jedi, so to speak, is dating, so to speak, one of the people from the dark side. She jumps into the darkness without question. She trusts herself no matter what, and find out she's the daughter of the darkest person, or the granddaughter of the darkest force in the universe. So she figures out who she is, comes to terms with it, and the enlightenment is being dark and light, and just being yourself was the strength that she needed. And the ultimate scene right after she does that is this fleet of ships are about to leave, and all the friends that they've made along this journey through all the movies shows up, and there's this ultimate change in energy. And even though they're outgunned, what happens? The light energy takes down the dark energy, but it's not because the light is stronger than the dark. It's because they came out of love for everybody and the love of freedom and the love of everyone's right to be who they are. The controlling energy can't thrive in that. So that disappears, and the ultimate celebration comes in of, yeah, you may not make it through the battle, but you paid, like what we say when soldiers die, they paid the ultimate price for freedom. They paid with their life. So their sacrifice is the greatest sacrifice of all. That's what we're looking at. And that's where I feel like enlightenment is not this, okay, I've done this personal meditation and now I understand who I am and I can do this and I can do that. That's not enlightenment. Enlightenment is when you go and look at every situation in your life and go, okay, here I was doing stuff for the good. Here I kind of played a little bit in the dark side where I shouldn't have been. My shadow side took a little control there. And you're able to see both sides for what they are in each situation and go, okay, so if I can do, by using this dark, shadowy side, I can see manipulation. I can see emotional entrapment. I can see all these games that people play to try and get the upper hand. When you're in your light form, you don't see that because you're in the land of, oh, I'm in love. Nothing is stronger than love. So I don't have to worry about everything that's going on, which is an illusion because, yeah, you still exist in this world. That's the enlightenment, is knowing I can be in love, I can be in shadow, I can be both of those at the same time and be who I am. And the one way that I respond to every situation determines who I am, not anybody else, not any judgments about myself. I decide based on which aspect I see and which one I put forward. And if I am in a situation where, say I'm feeling trapped and I'm like, the only way out of this is I got to tell a little white lie or something, I can't sit there and go, well, out of love, I can't lie. And I can't do this because that'll bring harm to somebody. You're dead. So what difference did it make? Whereas if you said, well, shadowy side, if this guy's looking like is easy target, it can be easily manipulated, and I might be able to use him to take this guy out of the equation, and I can escape. Well, what can you do when you escape? You can go, well, I really shouldn't have manipulated the guy. I know I did it for the right reasons, but let me learn and grow. You can't do that if you're dead. So that's where I view the enlightenment is not the, okay, I'm one over the other. It's you got to live in both and accept both have value.
Do you know that story that what you just kind of said? It reminded me of the story of David. He was crowned over Saul and he had to go on the run. One of the things he did to keep alive was to camp out in the enemy's camp. He pretended to be a crazy person. I mean, spit rolling down his beard and everything. So that's kind of he played on his shadow side. He didn't just do it for a few days or a few weeks. He was there long enough that he gained the trust of those individuals who were the enemy of his tribesmen. And that's one of the ways he survived. And it was by deceit. It was by tricking the enemy into believing he was an ally. It's like, oh, pat the little guy on the head. He's a little crazy guy. But he was useful to them, and that's how he survived. And I don't think that there's a lot of people that, especially in today's culture, that would, see that as an honorable thing to do. But if you look at that story's legacy and the individuals that led through that story, whether you believe it's literal or metaphorical, the point is in order to survive that, he did what he needed to do to survive his travel. And some of that was to really see the benefit in tapping into that shadow side and using deceit. I mean, let's face it, that's just part of being in this place at this given point in time. It feels like that there are a lot of distractions going on that are trying to avoid enlightenment. There's a lot going on that are just distractions, period. And it's almost like it's being used to polarize people. And like I said before, it doesn't matter what ism you are, what belief system you are. It's all BS anyway, right? Belief system.
Yeah.
The whole thing is that um, well, you're harming me because you have this particular way of doing something, or promoting something. And again, it's all a distraction. And it's kind of clouding reality. It doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean it is true. And that, again, that's going to go back to discernment. A lot of people still believe some of the political things going on that are real, when they've already shown that several years ago that those were staged. But people they have enough distance that they're trying to play that whole scenario over again, and it's working because now they're not showing these things on mainstream platforms. They're now showing them on alternative media sites. People are believing these things, and we've lost some of our discernment maybe a little bit in that respect. And this is where I think it's not necessarily even an aspect of love and light. It's a lack of enlightenment, that you don't have enough memory, that what didn't this happen before? You go back in enough history, guess what? It's been going on for millennia. So this is the enlightened part that I feel like is really lacking right now. There are too many detailed distractions that people are getting into right now. They used to say not long ago, sit back, trust the plan, and it's just a movie, and get out your popcorn. Well, I say the exact opposite. You can have this thing playing if you want, but I'm putting the popcorn down. That's one of the
Agreed,
reasons why.
refill.
Yeah, I'm putting the popcorn down. I don't even go to the movies anymore. I couldn't tell you how many. I've been back here in the States since 2014. I may have gone like a couple years after that. That's it. Here we are in 2025. I just don't find value in it. I find more value in finding people that are having relevant discussions, which I hope this is helpful. This is the whole reason I'm doing this, is I hope that this is helpful to someone. You don't have to agree with either one of us, but at least get you to think about what's going on, not just outside, but within your own self, and what your filters are, because we all have them. We all have those intrinsic biases that are going to filter what we see and what we believe. Put down the popcorn, man. I'd rather go pull weeds than go to a movie. And I hate
Well,
going. I hate that.
yeah, who doesn't? But I mean, when we look at religiosity, there is another example of enlightenment that people have missed because they're so focused on the individual. And that is when you look at the head of the entire deal. And of course, I mean, JC, Jesus. Everybody looks at him as being the embodiment of love and light. Everything he did was
You
of
mean
love
that
and
guy that
light.
went into the temple and overturned the tables
That's
and
exactly where
beat
I'm going.
people? And beat people. I was like, you vipers, you.
He gave in to his shadow side and attacked the merchants in the temple and let his anger get the better of him. And when I say anger get the better of him, is, I'm sure there were ways they could have handled that without the throwing of tables and whipping people and, beating on people and
I don't
having
know,
crew
man.
had to
Depends on what
come in
part of
and
the
go,
country you're
"What are
from.
you doing?"
Depends on what part of the country you're from, because everybody needs a good old fashioned whopping now and again. I mean, and you know what
Yeah.
I always would say, that it's not necessarily trauma, but difficulties. Maybe it is trauma to some people. Those kinds of challenges, they should be looked at as a catalyst. So if something happens to me and I don't like it, I don't sit there and get mad about it. I mean, I might in the heat of the moment get a little peeved, but I'm gonna best place for me to kind of chill and work through things is to get behind the wheel of my car. And I'll be driving, and all this stuff, not even really like consciously think, I'll be listening to something, and these other thoughts will start coming up. It's like, hey, you need to think about this, you need to process this, and what did that mean, and what a jackwagon that person was. It's like, well, why did they do that? What could I have done? I start analyzing that. How can I, if that unpleasant event had not happened in my life, I would not have made the thought processes or changes that will help me. That's the only way I can put it. So negativity in our life can be, not as always, but can be a catalyst for positive change. I 100% believe that. That's why I really feel like that this whole dark and light thing, dark and shadow, shadow and light, and I think it's all of it, is part of us, and it needs to be integrated and balanced. Needs to be balanced in a healthy way.
And and here's an example that might help people, and it's my own personal experience, so take it for what it is, but it's my personal truth and my experience. With that being said, is I grew up in circumstances to where if I, was doing math homework and if I didn't put every number and column perfectly, my paper would get torn, it'd get crumpled up, thrown on the floor, and told to start over. That was my experience and kind of why I hate math, to be honest. But that's an aside note. But so I grew up with this harshness of needing to be perfect, needing everything to be neat, orderly. And I grew up, where if you make a mistake, you get yelled at, berated a little bit, and depending on the severity, you could have got a wooden spoon. Now, would I say I would go back in time and want to erase that? The actual answer is no, I would not, because of the enlightenment that's come from it. Is one, I would never do that to my kids when I have them because I remember what it felt like on every level. So I broke the cycle of it. I can't continue it. And I know I broke it because I seen it break the people who were doing it and they stopped doing it. So the cycle ended. The other thing is growing up and, choosing not to fight. I got beat up all the time. I was like a punching bag. I was, every bully's biggest dream because I would just give in and they could do whatever they wanted. And it's not because I couldn't fight back, it's because I knew if I fought back, I could hurt them. And so I chose not to. And I was advised not to fight anyway, also. But there's always two sides to every decision going up along the way. And I look at where I am today and how we're having this conversation. And I go, and I have to say, if I went back and erased all the hardships and all the negative aspects of my youth, I cannot guarantee you who is here today having this conversation with you would still be here. So, in that aspect, the enlightenment is for me to be who I am, I had to go through all of that because it was laid before me to make me who I am, who I chose to be. And that's the enlightenment. Seeing everything for what it has done in that moment, in the future, in the present. You can see it all in one single moment and realize when you look at yourself and I look at myself and I go, who am I? I'm like, I'm a happy person. I enjoy life. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the people that I get to interact with. And I enjoy the fact that when people show their true colors, I don't get offended by it or get reactionatory to it. I just simply move on accordingly. And if their true colors are great colors to me, we stay friends and I know them for who they are. If their colors are colors I don't want to be around anymore, I simply walk away. No harm, no foul. There's no judgment, there's no attachment to what's going to come down the road. And having that knowledge and that perception and that ability to see everything around on multiple layers and levels, to me, is when you reach a state of enlightenment. Now, with that being said, enlightenment is a momentary thing because I can have something happen when we go off air and something happens and it's like, wait, everything I just said now I feel is wrong because of this moment. Well, enlightenment just became even more enlightened. It's a changing aspect. And that's the one cataclysmic word all humans have disdain for on any level is the word change. everybody wants. Once you get something, that's it. Everything's done. You've achieved. You're done. Lessons learned. You now earn the right to a lifelong happiness. And
How
unfortunately,
boring
in
would that
this
be, though?
world,
How
it
boring would
doesn't
that
work.
be, right? How that would be like wicked boring. Just to say, have that lesson and say, hot diggity dog, I'm done. I know it all. That would be like
Yeah.
really, really boring.
So here's a question a friend asked me on an interview. He's in the UK. Andy, this one's for you. He actually hit on enlightenment without realizing he was hitting on enlightenment. And the question goes, if you could have infinite knowledge of everything at your fingertips, but you couldn't share it with a single person, would
Oh,
you want it?
wow. So here's the twist to that, because we do have that. We just don't want to go through what needs to be gone through to access all that information that is for all knowledge, but to not share it. We do have that ability to access it, but to not share it, I don't know if that's even possible. But if somebody had their little fairy wand and blew some pixie dust and away you go, I would definitely have to say no. I'll go through the struggles, right?
See, here's the funny thing, that the beauty of you versus me. I said to him, if I have all knowledge of everything, it's going to be revealed to people. I can't hide it from everyone because my actions are going to reveal the truth that's there.
But
And
you
he
couldn't
goes,
though.
okay,
That
so
wouldn't
you
be the
can tell.
deal though, right? Because he
He
said,
never said I couldn't take action. So by taking action, I am and what
but
that
that's
means
a
is,
form of revealing though, isn't it?
so we were talking in terms of paranormal awareness. And so I said to him, I would still investigate. And by investigating, my evidence will reveal what it reveals. And because I have the infinite knowledge, I would know what experiments to do to bring the evidence out. Well, sorry, I hit my hard drive and knocked it over. That's what that noise was. But I didn't sit there and say to everybody, here's the answer. I just said, here's what my evidence reveals. And I said, nobody is going to want, it's going to come out anyway. And so he finally goes, all right, you can tell one person. And I was like, if I could tell one person, then I would say yes in a heartbeat, because then, you can have conversation back and forth. But to have it all, there's no way it would never be revealed. And so it's like, we look at, even like right now, where we're talking about love and light and enlightenment, we know, like you're saying, we know our own truths. We're not sitting there saying to everybody, here's our truths. We're throwing out the idea, and people will resonate with what they resonate to, and will reveal to them our truths through that resonance. And it'll go to them, who will go to the next person, to the next person. So it's going to be revealed. Just because we didn't say it doesn't mean it won't be revealed. Our actions, that's where that adage my parents would say to me, and it always infuriated me, is your actions speak louder than your words. I never really understood what that was, and I feel like I just now, actually right now in this moment, got what they mean. Is by me conversating and having this conversation, my actions are revealing the truth to you of what love and light and enlightenment is to me, just like yours is being revealed to me. We're not saying it in our words, what's what. We're seeing it, interpreting it, filtering it in, and going. And by, adding in the words, we're able to make clarity of what we're interpreting. And so we're like, okay, yeah, I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly by when I respond and you say, no, that's not what I meant. I'm like, okay, had that interpreted wrong. Correction. Oh, so now it's this. Aha. We get an aha moment. And so that's where I think the Enlightenment comes from and why change is so important, but we've been trained to be afraid of it is because we think it's this cataclysmic, it's going to make everything we've ever thought fall apart and be devastating when simply it's taking one idea like this and just shifting it just a tiny bit. It's not breaking it where, we look at it like this. What's really happening is this ball here is going here. It's moving as a whole, but because we view it as the splinter because it's challenged what we think it's broken now,
You know what I
but it's
just saw an
not.
image of? If you had a glass of water and you put a straw in that glass of water, the straw hasn't broken, but because of that refraction through the water, it looks like it's broken in two, but it's not. It's a
Exactly.
matter of the angle and the reflection, and then that refraction happens. So that's kind of what maybe you're describing. You may have a view that it's that it's this, but it's still really this. It's just
Exactly.
your perspective of it is like this, but it's really still like this. Because that straw's in that water and it looks like it's ink, but it's not. You pull the straw out, it's whole.
Yeah. And that, we hear the terms all the time getting thrown around about people who can do magic, and magic is this great illusion. And I think magic is actually people who can tap into the real world. And I know this is going to throw confusion into the everything, but when I say magic, I'm talking MAGIK, not MAGIC, because that magic, the IC magic, is pure illusion for entertainment. The IK is actually knowledge. And I just can't believe I just figured out saying it out loud. I see. Well, what do you see? You see the illusion.
Mm-hmm.
But the IK, I know the knowledge. It's like in the word.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things you brought up earlier though was it was something about this whole idea of using yourself through an enlightenment and not necessarily using words. One of the things my mom would say would be, preach the gospel every day, and if necessary, use words. So she was ultimately saying people are going to know you by your deeds. People are gonna see it. If you say you're one thing and then you're off doing something that contradicts that, they're gonna pick that up.
I'm just loving the synchronicity in this because I was working on my book and I was working on experiences I had when I was in Egypt. And one of the things I was talking about was I went to the Assyrian, which is the spot where Osiris was resurrected by his wife Isis after his brother Seth cut him to pieces. Well, I had looked at, Osiris was the god of fertility, resurrection, and all this stuff, and Isis is protection and what she is. And then I looked at Seth, and he's, Lord of the Sand and kind of like the trickster. And I looked at, and everything for what it was. And Anubis in the death, when you die in Egyptian lore, you go and you are set in front of Anubis, who has these scales, which has the feather of Mot on the scale, and that is truth and justice. And your heart is put on the scale, and if it's lighter than a feather, you get to go through. If it's heavier than a feather, you meet Amit, who's the devourer. Well, people took that to mean, your heart has to be in the right place. That's not what it means. The heart is your deeds, your actions, your words, your whole everything about you is being judged. And so if your actions and your deeds, say you were a rich man, but you helped the people that were less fortunate than you, and you still prospered and you helped, everything. Your heart would be lighter than a feather in their culture. Your deeds brought it about. Now, if you were a rich man who treated everybody with disrespect and didn't help anyone, your deeds would be heavier than the feather because of your actions. So in that culture, they deem action in your deeds mean more than your word and what you have. And that's to me why I say Egypt is truly the land of magic, Magik, because they know what's coming. They remember, they've learned, and they keep that knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think there are a lot of texts that were written that are metaphorical and not literal. Because, it just paints, like you said, when you're light in your heart and you know you've done good deeds, there's a little bit of a moral twist to that because there are some people who would do things to others that would be very unpleasant, but they do it with glee. So there's kind of a little bit of a twist to something like that. And who's to know? Maybe we'll receive enlightenment on that aspect of what that means. Because, like I said, that there are some people who feel very justified in their deeds, and feel that they were a benefit to humanity and others and themselves by doing some very dark things. Um, and if they were to reach that point of encountering their heart with a feather and having that metaphor play out, they wouldn't have any guilt over that. Their heart would be light because they were, if you look at it from this humanistic 3D perspective. So it's almost like that is a philosophy in and of itself. Um, Maybe even that is not meant to be taken literally. It could be whatever your perspective is. Getting back to the whole idea of, something that you might think of as negative is a catalyst for positive change in your life.
Well, and another of the flaws is one of the main reasons why I left religiosity and never really got into it is you can do all the bad deeds you want, and then come Sunday, do a thing called confession, and your slate's wiped clean. I'm like, I don't think so. You're not going to clean your ledger, so to speak, by going and saying, okay, I confessed everything bad I did this week. So now that it's confessed, I'm in the clear. It's like, I don't think so.
But it's worse because
Be
then they're going to go out and do the same thing. That's
exactly.
the even worse
You're
part. It's
not,
one thing, I did some really horrible things. Here's what I did, and you're absolved. And okay, and that would be fine if you went off and you didn't do those things anymore. The harsh part is you're right back to your same old game.
yeah, it's like you didn't learn the lesson of what really it means. And so that's where I take, you know, issue with religiosity is because they give you all these quote unquote free passes. And even, I don't know if you're aware of this, but even the biggest pass is there is forms of Christianity. I don't know if it's which branch, but I've heard it several times that if you're on your deathbed and you could have been, say, a contract killer with hundreds or thousands of deaths on your ledger, and you're on your deathbed and you go, I killed a lot of people. The priest goes, up, oh, you're absolved. May heaven greet you with a light heart because you accepted Jesus as your savior. You're automatically absolved of everything you did in your life. It's like, wait just a cotton picking minute. I don't think so. Because, like you're saying, that gives everyone the free pass to commit every crime they want all through life and go, got the get out of jail free card. I'm good because I can play this card at the last minute and I'll die with a clear conscience because I played the card and was absolved. I don't think that's how it works. And I think that's something that I think people need to be aware of. And I think once that comes to mainstream knowledge, and by mainstream knowledge, I mean it's spoken everywhere and everyone accepts that. Imagine how much different the world will be when you get the get out of jail free cards taken away and everybody realizes everything we do, no matter what, is going to be weighed at the end. That there is no golden ticket to trick the scales anymore, so to speak.
You're kind of touching on a whole other 2-hour gig on that one, and what happens, what happens with all of that. Yeah, there's a lot that goes on there that deals with your belief systems and the influences of just being here in whatever space you're in, whatever part of this thing we call Earth that you're in, your cultures. I mean that's really complicated to bring that up about, what happens when you cross over. Um, yeah, I mean that's very different. If you want to have another gig, we could really roast some marshmallows over that one. It might even turn into some s'mores. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm game.
All
I'll go
right.
for s'mores anytime. No, but I mean, I'm not meaning it to like take on religion. I'm just meaning it as in the enlightenment of there's you are judged by your deeds, and there is no like look at
So
the
who's the
movie Avengers, the
so
Black
who- so
Widow and what was his name? The arrow guy. The archer, what was his name? Hawkeye. They kept looking at each other and going, we are no longer doing bad deeds, we're doing good deeds, and we're trying to get all the red out of our ledger. And there was a scene where Black Widow was about to die, and she's like, I can't die because I have so much more red in my ledger I need to clear before I die and make up for because of all the horrible stuff she did in her life, because of how she was
deathbed
raised.
guilt, deathbed guilt.
But when you look at, a lot of people would say, though, the fact that she died to save humanity kind of, I think, would wipe probably half of that red off of that ledger because they're like, that's an ultimate. That's not a small thing. And so they start to view the levels of what you deeds you did, and it's like we still, as humans, love to quantify things and label things.
Exactly.
And that is the one total aspect that I think is the funniest thing about humans because I was talking with a guest and I said, if I have a guest that comes on and says the sky is purple, I'm going to defend their right to say the sky is purple all day long on the show. Do I agree with them? No. But then I started thinking about it and going, well, you know what? How do we know what we're looking at is that's blue isn't really purple? We just accepted the fact that blue is what we were told blue is and never questioned what actually is blue.
I can't remember what people group it as. I think it may have been like a South American tribe that had no word or didn't when they would show them color swatches, they didn't I could have sworn it was purple, but they didn't have a word for purple. And they saw the purple like a blue. They didn't see purple. They could not their brains could not distinguish between something that was blue and something that was purple. So a lot of that is about, man, you talk about an ingrained cultural upbringing that teaches you there is no difference between these colors. They're all kind of the same. They had greens and oranges and yellows, and I think they had some limited views of even that. I don't think they had words for maybe pink. I can't remember, but it was something. This was years ago. I had seen this little documentary about how much our culture can influence because it wasn't important to them,
Right.
that to have those differences in colors because they didn't have cars and cell phones and no electronics whatsoever. And, so for them, didn't have an impact on their life. So I think it's really fascinating that we have the cultures that we do. And because these labels are put on, and all of a sudden there's all these differences that our society wants to bring up. And really, we should be like those people in the jungle going, they look the same to me.
Yeah.
It's no difference. It's what are you talking about? And that's kind of how I think that maybe we're kind of failing a little bit with some of this division that we put on, and we want to have our own little slot and be identified as whatever it is that you want to identify with. And a lot of the division is causing derision. And when people really need to be those tribes in the jungle going, there is no difference. It's the same. These
Right.
are all the same. It's like they didn't have, it was the same tribe. It might, yeah, I don't remember where they were. They didn't even have different names for relations. Everything was uncle, right? Every man was your uncle and every woman was your aunt. It could have been your third cousin, and if it was a guy, he was your uncle. You know what I mean? So it was no different to them. They were all family.
Right. And that's one thing that we've lost is when we were small communities here in the Americas, when we first started, everybody helped everybody.
Hmm.
Everybody, if one person grew crops and had enough to feed its family, the leftovers went to a neighbor who may not have had such a good year with their crops or needed their crop to trade for something that they did need. And so it was all a unified, everybody helped everybody. Then all of a sudden came in the aristocracy, so to speak, or the people who wanted to be in the aristocracy, the landowners who said, "Oh, I farmed this through these people, and this surplus I will sell you." Well, all of a sudden, the people who have been dependent on this are like, wait, I don't have money. If I had money, I would buy my own. And so they're left to starve while the landowner gets wealthy because he's able to sell his crop somewhere else. And meanwhile, the community starts to dwindle and fail because the landowner is broke the community code, so to speak, and is buying everything up and then goes and expands and starts to buy and
They've centralized.
expand.
Things start
Yeah.
getting centralized. And there's nothing wrong with having something that is growing and that as long as it's something that's beneficial. The thing that kind of brought my to my mind was, do you know the story of Boaz?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the same kind of thing where Ruth ends up being a widow and is taking care of her mother-in-law because her husband had died, and she finds herself going out after the reapers in Boaz's fields, and they would not be able to pick every single grain. So she was one of those poor people that would go through. Now they were still working, but they were allowed to go through the fields and pick up after, the reapers would go through, and she would pick up the little grain heads, and that's how she and her mother-in-law lived. And what happened with Boaz is he, kind of thought that that was very honorable, and she ended up being the one that he chose to say to his workers, "Hey, make sure you leave a little extra because she's working hard for her mother-in-law and herself. She's a
Yeah.
widow." So he had that heart. He was a big landowner. He was well-to-do, but he was doing what he could. She still had to go out there and find the grain and pick it up and process it. So she was still doing her part, but he also did his part in giving back. And I think that that's what a lot of our community today has lost is those people who do make the millions and the tens of millions and go on up that particular scale, that they aren't really realizing the reason that they have this amount is really off the backs of the individual, of the people who we're the ones supporting them. The same thing with the government. They don't care. They just take from us, and the governments and all around the world. Their only goal is to perpetuate the government. It's not to help the people necessarily. They'll do enough to keep us going because they kind of realize that aspect of it. But when we decentralize it and bring it home, as it were, and you go more into your community, more and more community gardens are popping up. This is where we're going to find that community enlightenment and realizing who is around you. And there might be a growing period that a lot of people either are not going to be able to do that because physically people aren't able to do that. Not everybody can do that. I struggle to go cut my grass, but I'm going to go out and do it. But for people who can't do that, just like with Ruth looking after, she couldn't go out and grow all her own stuff. She didn't have the resources to do that. And it took the big landowner to say, hey, there are some needy people. Don't be quite so efficient. It's okay. Do your job. We'll make our market. And there were enough for the others to come in and pick up and live a decent life. If they wanted to do more, they had to do something else or grow from that. So I guess my point is that we all are going to realize, and that not that real lies, acronym that people like to put out there, but this is the real eyes, that this is going to wake you up and create that enlightenment, that when you are able to shift your perspective a little bit, that's where the real growth is coming from. That when you have that enlightenment, it kind of has maybe a twofold effect where you're going to then start rotating back and gaining more of that love and light, as it were, and it's going to flip back to maybe more enlightenment. So it's going to have a nice little start the little perpetual engine and keep growing.
Well, and another way to look at it is look at King Solomon. When you take his most famous case and break it down to a intellectual episode over the emotional aspect of it, he has two mothers coming to him over a child, one that's wealthy and providing, and one that, is like has the love of a mother and is wanting her family and community. And, you're looking at it and going, okay, how do you decide who to give it to? Do you give it to the rich woman who can give him everything he wants? Or do you give him to the community that's going to support him and help him grow and learn? It's like, who am I to judge? How do I know? And when he threatens to cut the kid in half, so each have a half, the wealthy woman says, well, half is better than nothing. So yeah, I'll take half. And the mother that is the community says, well, a half doesn't do me any good because we're not halves, we're wholes. Take him. And that's how she gets him because he realizes she understands the value of the person. The wealthy woman didn't understand the value of the individual and what it truly meant. And so I think that's why he made the decision he made was the mother who stood for the community and was like, I will give up my half so he stays alive. She understands if I can't work and I can't do this because I'm mourning him, then everybody suffers. So I'd rather miss having him around. I can still do what I need to do, still help the community, and everybody still can prosper, but there'll be sadness. Whereas the lady who was wealthy was, well, half is better than nothing because we're not needing, we don't need, this or that. We're not needing and all of this. That he's like, well, if you don't need him, then you don't deserve him. So that's why it fell the way it fell, in my opinion. And that's the lesson that people overlook is everyone thinks, oh, because she made the ultimate sacrifice, that's why she won. There's more to look at and more to understand under all these parables than people want to look at and see. And that's where I think the religiosity really has done more harm than good is, besides taking out well, never mind, I won't go into that because that's another topic for another day, but
Oops.
I'll catch myself on that tangent. See how enlightened I am? I caught myself going down a tangent.
No, seriously, yeah, but I mean, I get that. I mean, I remember that story very well, where it was, I think it was the two women. One was the real mother, and one was claiming to be the mother, and it was the real mother because she had a true tie and a true caring for the child, the love for the child, and she cared more for the life of the child than what she did about possession. And whereas the other woman was just making her decision, yeah, go ahead, I'll take half of them because it was done out of spite, because she wasn't looking for a gain out of that deed of saying I'll take half, because she wasn't really expecting anything. Her choice was to hurt the other woman, because if I can't have him, you can't have him either. I'll take half. If that's your decision, I'll take half. So it was good that Solomon did have that enlightenment in his. Of course, it was more to the benefit of the child, but
Or his coffers.
yeah, really. Oh yeah. So anyway, so yeah, so he knew how to get people to show their real side, and that
Yeah.
woman was claiming to have rights to the child, whereas the other one really did have the rights, and since he didn't have that ability to tell the difference, that's how he got them to expose themselves. There's that. There's the love, the light, and the enlightenment, all in one little story.
Yeah, same with Moses. I mean, being put down the river in a basket found by Pharaoh's mother, who raises him and makes him equal to Pharaoh in the aspect of in the court. He gets status and everything, even though he's not Egyptian and wasn't born by them.
I don't know. I think
And
there might be some uh, documentation somewhere that says he was in there somewhere. I can't remember. There was something that came up in history that his lineage was not what we were originally told. But anyway, to serve the story,
well, yeah,
he was brought in from the outside and not overtly. It was through the reeds, right?
yeah. And I mean, it was the love of a mother that saved him. And so, she could have easily had said, "Oh, Pharaoh declared this, go execute him." But the motherly instinct took over, and she was like, "Nope, we're raising him." And she defied Pharaoh and was like, "Nope, I'm raising this child. He's gonna be a brother to the Pharaoh to
I
be."
wonder if looking back, not to be rude, but I wonder if looking back now, if I mean, he was the bane of their existence. I
Yeah,
mean, let's face
I
it,
know.
they pull him out of the river through the reeds, raise him, and dang,
He
is this how
betrays
you
him.
show your appreciation? It's like boom, water, blood, frogs, pestilence.
Yeah, he's like, "We're
I
bringing
said
down an
frogs, not
empire."
dogs. But yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I think there's all of these little bits and pieces are definitely worth looking at. And I think the biggest thing is to kind of grow with that enlightenment. And you don't have to agree with other people. I think that's really important to realize that it's okay for somebody to not agree with you, and it's okay for somebody to have a different opinion. You don't have to take that on, you know. And it's all part of that trying to see why people say what they say and do what they do, and you carry on. It doesn't mean you don't make corrections and adjustments if if somebody's hurting someone. You don't accept that, but that's all part of that love of yourself, and it does shed the light on the things that we do to ourselves and others, and in that growth process comes the enlightenment, I hope, for most of us anyway. Did you say before that you had updated your bio or no?
Uh, I've updated it in the regards of what's happening in July is
Oh
and
no,
added to it.
I'm just thinking about how people can get a hold of you, and all
Oh, the
that.
link trees are all still the same. The link trees
Okay.
stay the same.
Okay, so I still have that. I save all that stuff in a document, and I'll post that in the description below. But
And
last
the
words of
nice,
wisdom, Michael.
I was gonna say the nice thing about the link trees is even if I do update it, it's still the same link, so it's automatically updates for everybody.
Yep.
Words of wisdom, I would say first step, stop labeling everything. Don't think that everything needs to be labeled to be identified. Secondly, I would say live for the moment and just enjoy being in the moment because what has happened, and what will happen, you know, it's going to happen. So why stress yourself over it? It's meant to be or it's not meant to be, and whatever is meant to be will happen. So if you're stressing over something and it changes and doesn't happen, then you wasted all that energy stressing over something. So just be in the moment. And a word that we were using, I will say, for the third thing of wisdom is we've been using the word a lot tonight and haven't really explained it, I think, well. And I'll take a shot at it right now. And that's discernment. And what discernment means is you look at your truth where you are right now and say, what this person or this action does resonates and feels right to me. So therefore, it's right now. And you take action. And if it doesn't feel right, you don't do it. But it doesn't mean you have to engage it to make it right. It doesn't mean you have to go after the person who you're not resonating with. Discernment just simply means follow what feels right to you in this moment and be okay with the fact that the moment comes and goes. and there's nothing wrong with living in the moment. Don't beat
As
yourself
long as
up
you're not going
for
to
the
hurt
past.
yourself or somebody else.
Well, I would figure if you're going to hurt yourself or someone else,
That could be
it
living in
doesn't
the
feel
moment,
right.
man.
Well, I would figure that doesn't feel right would kick in and stop you from doing that.
No, there are some people that if they don't take that step of saying, yeah, if I do that, it's going to hurt somebody. But it felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't know. Maybe
I'll put
that's
a
my
fourth
shadow
yeah.
side, brother.
All right, I'll put a fourth caveat on is do no harm to self and others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you made a really good point too, is that the past are we remember the past and we can plan for the future, but really both of those things we should draw off of for where we're at right now. If we can't have it right now, it's not worth remembering and it's not worth planning for.
Yeah. I mean, well, and look at it this way. If you plan to be wealthy and rich and you end up getting some money, but not all the money, think of what you can do because you did take those steps. But don't beat yourself up that and be the guy that goes, "Oh, I'm going to go buy a house and buy a car and pay off this house over here for my friend because I'm going to be getting this money in." And then when it doesn't come in, you're now thousands or not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and thinking, I'm never going to be able to pay this off because this didn't come through. That's a bad form of planning ahead. Plan ahead mean we're talking like if you think you're going to get a raise, set aside, and start saving a little extra so you can buy something for yourself or someone else. And if it comes through, great. And if it doesn't, you still have something towards it. And so you just keep working towards it. Don't sit there and go, well, it didn't come through. So forget it. I'm going to go waste it on this and throw away all your efforts. The moment is you're wanting this. So work towards that. And it can come and go. It can change. Your wants and desires may change, in which case, everything that you're doing, no matter what moment it is, however you change it, you have taken steps towards them. So you're never going to be at a loss for making those plans in the moment. How's that for a pearl? I have no idea where that just came from either.
I don't know, but it was a lot easier just to say you can plan for the future and you can remember the past, but all you really have is the now.
Well,
So what
like
you
you
kind of
said,
touched
some
on was
people,
the second show would be about manifestation techniques.
hey, you're the one who likes to point out some people may not take the easy route. So I was giving them the
Yep,
more intricate route.
yep, that's a fact. All right, well, thanks so much. We're going to end the live now. We'll have the descriptions posted in the description below, and I'll see everybody on the flip side.